Hello and welcome to this fantastic interview that I'm going to have here with the lovely Sibu, and he's going to tell you all about himself in a moment. And this little video is about finding your own mountain. So it's about following your dreams, following your passions, and never giving up. And once you hear Sibu's story, I think you will appreciate how important that could be. So first of all, Sibu, tell us what's your name and where do you come from?
Well, thank you very much indeed for having me, Karen, and thank you everyone that is getting the opportunity to either watch or listen to this. My name is Sibusiso Vilane. I come from Africa. I am a South African and a citizen of the world, which means I'm global because we all are. But yeah, well, I started quite young to do things that I wanted to do because I realized that is what obviously shapes your life and what you do in your life. And my journey began when I was about 3.5 years old because it was the only time I knew that my name was Sibusiso Vilane. And when that happened, my parents had separated and I was just growing up with my grandmother. And then I knew who I was from the age of 4 up until today. So yeah, that's me. I'm an adventurer. I run marathons, I've climbed mountains, I've done pretty much everything that is out there to offer, but it's a question of why not, really.
Absolutely. So tell the children, the young people watching, Sibu, what is your greatest achievement? It's quite an achievement, isn't it? What have you done that's so amazing?
Well, it is indeed, absolutely. It's a very interesting one when we talk about one's greatest achievements, because when you look at it, in the way I look at it, I think every achievement is great if the person is excited and if the person is happy and if the person is motivated about that and if that person is willing to share a story about it with their friends. Therefore, it is a great achievement. But yes, to put it, because I've achieved so much, there are lots of things that I look at them and I said, maybe that one is my greatest. But yes, the greatest of all was me coming from no climber background, no hiker background. If I put it, the title of my book is To the Top from Nowhere. So if I put it that way, it was me coming from nowhere in the bushveld in South Africa and just powering up the slopes of Mount Everest and becoming the first black person in the world to do that. And that is for me is the greatest achievement of all time, I would say, because I never thought in my wildest dreams when I was growing up, even when I decided at the age of 26 that I wanted to go and do this, I'd never thought I would do it. I believed immediately when I was given the opportunity that I could do it, but it wasn't something at the back of my mind when I was growing up as a child. And as such, coming from that background and being able to stand tall on the highest mountain on the earth is my grandest of achievements.
It's wonderful. So I think it's safe to say that you didn't come from a wealthy background, did you, Sibu?
Oh no, no, absolutely. I think when people say to me, Sibusiso, what we like about you, those that have met me, that have had the time to spend with me, they say it's your humility. I come from such backgrounds, very humbling backgrounds, because when I was about 4 years old, when my mother left us, and then I became the responsibility of my grandmother, I would find that my sister and I would endure days without food. It's very difficult for other children today in the world to understand that. But I still believe that there are many children in the world, in corners of the world, of the planet Earth that we don't know about, who go to bed hungry, who wake up in the morning hungry. And I was that like that because I didn't have a home, and I never wore a pair of shoes until the age of 10 when it became as a uniform. I never bought my first pair of shoes were not for leisure. They were for a specific reason, which was part of a school uniform. And up until that, I'd never worn a pair of shoes. When I was about 7 years old, people came to my mother. They took advantage of the fact that I wasn't at school, and they came to my grandmother and said, "Can we have him help us?" And my grandmother, through desperation, agreed to let me work for people looking after goats. And the responsibility, if I can explain to those who don't understand what it takes to be a little head boy in the bush, in African bush, is you get up in the morning, whether you've had a meal or not, or breakfast or not, you have the responsibility to drive these I don't know, 10, 20, 30 goats into the bushveld, which is kilometers away from where you live, where you stay, and you spend the day on your own with the whole lot and making sure that they're kept together. And I tell you, if you've never been responsible for heading after goats, it is not a great job. You don't want to do that. But it's a responsibility. And I knew each one of them, and I couldn't count because I wasn't at school. But how I identified each one of them was by looking and comparing and things like the color, shape of their horns. The others didn't have horns, and I was able to identify that one was missing, and I would have to go out and look for it. So that only took about 2 years. So I know about 8 years old, I was given a responsibility to even look after much more very challenging cattle. Head of cattle is not easy for a little boy at my age, but I did that, and I must say I did it with merit. Again, it was the same thing. You go out into the bushveld, you spend your entire day alone, and you come back in the evening when you do what we call night crawling, just to put them back in their little enclosure. And then only then can you go and try and find out if you've got something or your grandmother has found something that you can put into your stomach. And if there wasn't any, you just lived like that. So it was my childhood and my upbringing up until the age of 9 was very desperate. It was very tough. As I said, I was wearing traditional loin skins. Those of you who don't know, it's just a piece of animal skin that you wear around your waist, and your upper body is pretty much naked. You don't have any clothes, and that didn't matter. Even sleeping at night, particularly in winter, now I'm dressed nice and warm. I wouldn't survive in those days because we had nothing, and you would just go with the very basic of blankets and everything. But that is what shaped my life, and it just made me want to take my life into my hands and take full responsibility of it because I didn't like the way I grew up. So if you don't like the way you grow up, it's up to you to change it. And that was my how I channeled my energy. And I believe everyone else has got the ability to do that if they realize what is it that they want and how they want to live their lives. But we shouldn't lie to ourselves and say it will be easy. No, it doesn't come easy. It comes through sweat, hard work, failures along the way, lots of frustrations. But the one thing that you can never do is to give up. So my childhood was very tough.
Mm. And I think it sounds like that really shaped the person. It made you want to do better things. Did it? Did it make you want to achieve? Do you think that was really what shaped you?
Absolutely, yes, it did. Because if I can put it in this way, I was looking around me and I was seeing the other children that were of same age as me, who were living. I wouldn't say they were very wealthy or rich families, but they were children who lived with their moms and their dads, and they had houses,
Mm.
and they would have 3 meals a day. Didn't matter whether it was basic food, whatever it was, they would have 3 meals a day, and that built a yearning to say one day when I grow up, I will have my children live with me in my own home at a place that they will call their home, and I will be the sole provider for them. I will give them food, I will be responsible for their education, and I will never let them be little head boys looking after goats. I did want to own livestock, have cows, because it is a traditional thing to have, and how we in the olden days people used to look at each other as rich and wealthy if they had a certain number of cows. And the most important thing for that for men, it was because for you to get a wife, you will have to give your in-laws a number of cows. So it was always in a young boy's mind to own some. But I never thought I would let my children do that because I knew how tough it was to do it. So yes, it was just my upbringing that shaped my life, and it was just looking around. I think it is important to have what we call today role models, people that you look up to and want to be like them or aspire to be like them, in as much as you can never be them, because that I try to say no. You want to be like them, you be you, and with the characters that they have.
Yeah.
And I made an example to say, if people ask me, who would you like to be on the planet Earth? I said, well, I would like to be me, being Sibusiso, but with all the character attributes and disciplines of a Nelson Mandela. Because I
Yeah.
can't be Nelson Mandela, but I can live the way he had lived. So I was looking around and thinking, I think it's a brilliant idea to have a home and to have a family and to look after children, take full responsibility of bringing them up. So that influenced the way I look into my life, and I wanted to lead that type of life, and I've been striving to do that. I'm doing very well on that side of it. But it started when I was about between the ages of 4 and 10, and it is never too late. It is never too late or too early to decide what you want to be,
That's
do,
true.
and have in life.
Yeah, we can decide at any age, can't we? So I think it is, and I love what you say there, that we don't, it's really important to learn from other people, and it's really important to look around and see what we, the qualities that we like in people, and it's not, or that we admire. It's not just about money, it's about strength and kindness and resilience and all of those things. So we should always be ourselves, but
Yes,
it's always okay to learn from others, isn't it? I think that's
it is.
really good point. So this brings me, so we're going to talk a little bit about the mountain, just a little bit. So I've got a few questions for you, a few quick fire questions. How long did it take you to climb Mount Everest?
How long did it take to climb Mount? It took a long time. I'm just going to talk about when I left Africa, going to the mountain and back to Africa. It took me 80 days of being away from home. But when I arrived at the start to climb the mountain, it took me 60 days to climb to the top of Everest.
Wow.
And yeah, so that is how long it takes. I don't think anyone can do it in any shorter or faster time than that. And every year and every time when you go to Everest, you must make sure that you've got yourself a spare of 2 months away from home,
Yeah.
living rather,
Yeah.
well, agonizingly cold.
So 60 days. So if we know that there's 30 days in a month, so it's roughly 2 months for you to get
Yes,
from the bottom to the top and all the way back down again. So
yes,
let's have a little talk about, now we were having a little laugh before you came onto this interview, because in South Africa at the moment it's about 10 degrees, which for us in the United Kingdom, in Britain, is not very cold, but for you in Africa that feels very chilly. So that's why you've got your hat and your coat on.
yeah.
So what would you say about the weather on Mount Everest? What can you tell the children about the weather?
Oh, to my friends who are listening, the weather on Mount Everest, you can never fully comprehend or understand how the weather is like, because every 5 minutes is different. It's that the kind of weather where the next moment you've taken all your jackets and put them away because it is already 20, 25 degrees. And within 2 minutes, everything has changed drastically to 10 degrees, to -10, to -15, to -20. So you've got to be prepared to mission with your self-regulation. If you're feeling warmer, you take off. If you're feeling colder, you put on. And it takes the discipline to do that. Yes, from as soon as we started arriving at base camp, during the day, it would always between Everest 15 or 10 degrees, and that's really cold. But at night, that's when the challenge is. When you're trying to sleep at night, temperature, as soon as the sun goes down, temperatures will just drop to sub-zero temperatures ranging from -10. The coldest I was to experience on Everest was -30, and people don't understand how cold that is. That is if your fingers and toes, or even your face, or your eyes, or your ears, or your nose is exposed, which means it's not covered, protected. You suffer from a condition called frostbite, which means they just wilt and fall off after some time. So that's how severe the cold is. And it's one of those, if for half a second your hand was exposed to the elements, it will just die. And the cold sensation is such that you just want to cry. I was already 33 years old, but it was so cold that I felt like I was a 4-year-old feeling cold and crying. So that's how painful it is. You don't want to be there. But yes, if you
Yeah,
want to climb Everest,
yeah,
I'm
you
not
have to put up
saying
with it.
don't, but you've got to be mentally prepared for it to be
Yeah.
able to take that up.
I'm a bit surprised that you said it goes from 25 degrees, which is like a sunny day in England, down to -30. I'm surprised that there's such I imagined it to be cold and snowy the whole time, but it obviously changes quite a lot. That's quite surprising to me.
It does. It does. The rapidity that it does it at is unbelievable. Because yeah, as I said, as soon as within 10 minutes of the sun having gone down, set down behind the horizon. The temperature is just like it looks like, but every second they're just dwindling and going down and down and down until the lowest. It's so rapid, and that it catches people unaware and unprepared in most cases. And I think most people just freeze to death if they are on the higher slopes of Everest.
Yeah.
That's how dangerous it can be because it becomes so drastic that you're unprepared for any that such a change, and then you are caught in it. It is madness.
Yeah. So, like you just said, it's a very dangerous thing to do, isn't it, climbing Everest? Not just because of the temperature, but what are the other dangers? Why is it dangerous in other ways? Obviously, the temperature is a real danger because you can die from frostbite or from hypothermia, can't you? But why else is it dangerous?
And there's quite a lot that is dangerous that most of us don't understand. Even if you read a book about it, you don't fully understand what can be dangerous other than just the weather and the snowstorms and wind. And you think, okay, if those are okay, then it should be fine. But the surface conditions where you are walking is also very dangerous because you're walking on a combination of loose rocks, a combination of solid rocks. You're walking on snow, frozen snow, big ice blocks the size of big buildings, and some of it is slippery, and some of it by nature they say it is a frozen river of ice called an ice fall, and that is where the route is up Everest. And this thing is so unstable such that every step you put on this ice block, the whole thing collapses and crumbles and kills people. Lots of avalanche every day. That's another danger. Um, and they hit people, and sometimes they bury camps when avalanches happen. But that is because of the excessive snowfall that happens on the mountain. And again, other people, because there are so many people on the route on the same mountains, and that poses as a danger if you are not careful. Not that we push each other all over, but the fact that there's so many of us on that little area, it's not good. It is unsafe. We cross crevices. These are big gaps again on the surface where you are walking. It's not like you're walking on a path or on a road. You're just walking in a wilderness area that is covered with these big gaps called crevices. This is a thing, some of which, if you're looking down, you can't even see the bottom. They're just waiting there just to for you to fall into them, and you never come out again. And most people have had accidents, most people have died in crevices, and the surface is also slippery. There are some parts of the mountain where you've got to use some shoes called crampons, the spikes on your feet just to give you a little bit of a purchase or grip, but you still slip and fall. So you've got to be very careful, really. But well, there are systems that are put in place for safety. It just makes it's only for the person that has to be responsible to make sure that they are oriented, they know where they know what they're doing. And you can climb it safer if you are able to be observant and be aware of the dangers involved. Because I think in places where things are dangerous, we human beings that are there become dangerous too because we take things for granted, we don't take precautions, and we don't care. And then before we know it, then we've fallen into a crevice where there's a fixed line or rope where you should have been clipped on, but you didn't because you are. So there's a lot. Some of it is because of us people. We are dangerous sometimes.
Yeah, we don't always concentrate when we should, do we? So
No.
there's lots. So you've got the slippery surface, you've got the crevices and the big sort of deep holes, you've got loose rocks, and I'm just
Mm.
going to explain avalanche is where the snow becomes unstable and starts to fall, isn't it, down the mountain, which
Eh,
and it's not a little bit of snow either. It can be tons and tons and tons of snow, can't it? Which you could easily be buried under an avalanche. So that's amazing that you and I might just point out to the children as well, when we say it takes you 2 months to climb it, 60 days, obviously you don't do that in one go, do you? You do it in
no.
stages, is that right?
That's very correct, and that's right. And the stages that I think I sum it up to about 4 stages, because your first stage is your approach, meaning you walk into base camp. That takes about 10 days on its own to walk to base camp from where you start trekking into, and that walking in is not easy as well. You're going up, you're gaining altitude, and then it is also cold, but you're sleeping in little tea houses which are built by the Nepalese people. Then you arrive at base camp. That is when then it becomes tent life. You live in a tent, which again has been put up by your support team. You must have support. Like in any other thing you want to do in
Yeah.
your life, support is your best, and you can't do anything alone. So when you arrive at base camp, now your next second phase or stage is to get acclimatized. And this is where the frustrating part is, because with the way you acclimatize, it's not about sitting at base camp and then thinking, okay, after 1 week or two of playing around at base camp, I'll be ready. No, you don't do it like that. So the first few days, you will just adapting to base camp. Once you've adapted to base camp, then we do what we call rotations. And rotations are frustrating to anyone listening because you start climbing from base camp, which is also quite high, 5,300 meters, about 19,000 feet. Then you climb up to Camp 1, which takes you about 8 or 10 hours, depending on how strong and how fast you are. That's like a whole day of walking, really. So you get to Camp 1, you stay in a little camp, in a little tent, and then it will be -15, -20. Walls of that little tent will be covered in snow and ice, and if you touched it, there will be an avalanche of icicles falling on you, and then you're looking forward to climbing higher than that to camp 2, because logically you think I need to be going to the next camp. No, your expedition leader says to you tomorrow at wake up, you pack your bags and then we go back down to base camp. And that's what you do. So what you had covered in distance and in time, you repeat it, going back down again. And then you sit at base camp after that first rotation, because you were in a group of people and people recover differently. Takes others a day, others 2 days, depending on how big your group is. I was in a group of 12. We were 12 in the group. So it takes about a week for all of everyone to feel ready to go. And we accommodate each other. We don't leave people. If they're not fully recovered, we wait until everyone else is. So that takes that long. Then now, once everybody says, okay, we feel that we fully rested, now you go back up again. Same route, same challenges or difficulty. To Camp 1, you stay the one night. And then the next move is you climb another 400 meters of altitude gain, which is really doesn't look like that much, but it's really quite long in altitude gain, because that means you climb for at least another 5, 10, or 6 hours, which is again a full day's work. You get to Camp 2, you stay for one night, and the next morning you withdraw back down to Camp 1,
Oh
all
dear.
the way down to base camp. And with all that effort, it's just like you are going nowhere. But yes, that's the way it's done. And the lessons I learned up there, to our friends listening, is it takes discipline.
Mm,
Discipline is doing the things you don't like to do, but if you do them, you will be able to do the things you like to do.
mm,
You want to do when you want
mm,
to do that. So I wanted to climb the mountain, and I was told, if you want to climb the mountain, therefore the discipline is you do all the three rotations. Doesn't matter how frustrating they were, I needed to do that because that will allow my body to have the strength and the fitness and the ability to be able to go. And I realized that every time I went up and came back down, my confidence grew. So this is what this was
mm,
doing. It
mm.
was helping me gain the confidence to walk on this terrain. But the third and final rotation takes you from base camp to Camp 1 to Camp 2 and to Camp 3 at 7,300 meters. Now, if you are using a human logic, you think about the summit of Mount Everest, which is at 8,848 meters. If you're at 7,300 meters, you only have another 700 meters to get to 8,000, and then you only have the 848 meters to contend with to go to the summit. So human logic will be like, that is the way to go. Camp 3, go to Camp 4, go to the summit and go home. No, the discipline of success is you follow the plan. And the plan was we will get to Camp 3 and we drove back down to Camp 2 and to Camp 1 and to base camp. And that takes a long time. It took us almost a whole month to do the rotations and with the resting in between. So that is why it takes that long to climb Mount Everest, because of all these rotations and these stages. So once you have acclimatized and done all the rotations, the next phase will be for you to wait, which can be shorter. It can be either maybe a week of waiting for your recovery and your the weather forecast, because you need 7 days from base camp to climb to the summit, of perfect weather, meaning perfect. There's no snowstorms, there's no high winds, and if that happens, then you get a go ahead, you go. But that is determined by the weather. In my case, we waited for a week, which is also frustrating because now you've done everything. You just wait patiently. Patience is one of the strengths and characters you need. Most of us tend to rush to achieve things. No, it takes patience to achieve things. It doesn't matter what it is that you were doing. If you are not patient enough, then you won't succeed. If you want to succeed, you must be patient. Have lots of it. And if you ask me, where does it come from? It's a choice. It's a choice. You choose to be patient or you choose to rush things around and then they don't work. But if you're patient, you are able to succeed because you choose to. So anyway, with all the patience, we waited and we got the summit report saying the mountain could be clear, therefore we were ready to go. So this is the fourth stage now where you go for your summit attempt. If you're lucky, it is 7 days, camp 1, camp 2, camp 3, then you get to camp 4, you rest, and then once you feel recovered, you set off and then you go and summit and then walk home if you're lucky. But we were not that lucky. After all the 4 stages, our first failed our attempt, we went as far as camp 2, the weather changed
Ah,
and it changed for the worst, and we had to withdraw because if the weather changes when you're halfway up the mountain, it might get worse. So you don't want to sit there. You want to go to a place which is much more safer, protected from avalanches, protected from the weather and the conditions. So we're pushed back down to base camp.
no.
You will there will be a time in your life where you are forced to just push back and just go down to your safety and wait there. So that's the lesson I learned with that. Frustrating as it was, and demotivating as it was, we had to go back, and we didn't go back to base camp to sit, and it was only a day or two of waiting, and then the weather cleared. It was 10 days of
Oh,
agony, of
no.
frustration, and the mountain was just dictating. And here's a very important lesson that I learned from that as well. As human beings, we may think that we are in control, but not entirely. There are things that we can control, and then there are things that we have to depend on nature for it to happen. So when it comes to weather, you have no option. You just have to adapt and be flexible and listen to what Mother Nature throws at you, then
Mm,
you can go. So those are the 4 stages that it takes to climb Everest. It takes a long, long time of
amazing.
agony.
Yeah. But you still kept going. And I just want to say to the young people listening, part of that going up and down, it's obviously to test your fitness. But when you talk about acclimatizing, that's because you're so high up, it can have some really serious effects on your body, can't it? What
Yes, yes,
happen to
yes.
your body when you're so high up?
Yes, the biggest challenge is the oxygen because as soon as you get to about over 3,000 or 4,000 meters, the oxygen in the atmosphere is so less in percentage, so it has such a serious strain on your body. But when you even climb higher to Everest Base Camp, the percentage drops. So the higher you go, the lesser the oxygen, and that is why you need to allow your body to sort of be able to use the little it is
Yeah.
getting
It
from
needs
the
to get used to
atmosphere.
it, doesn't it? It
And
needs to get used to
yeah,
that level of oxygen
yeah,
because we're used to breathing in a certain amount. So when it's much less, obviously it can make you breathless, it can make you feel unwell, can't it? It can make you dizzy and
yeah.
lightheaded. So I suppose your body just has to get used to that, doesn't it?
That's exactly that. So that is why the very critical stage of climbing a mountain the size of Mount Everest is to allow your body to do just that. And we call it acclimatization. Without the acclimatization, it is impossible to do
Could
it.
do it. Yeah, it's sort of, I suppose we could liken it to, it's like if you decide to run a marathon, you can't do that on the first day, can you? You've got to run a little way and then
No,
a bit longer and then a bit longer and then a bit longer until you get your build up your resilience. And lots of the young people, their school mottos will be about resilience, and resilience is about never giving up and accepting challenge and not being defeated and keeping going. So that is a really good kind of comparison, isn't it, between sort of being
oh
resilient in
yeah,
life and
absolutely.
climbing a mountain.
Yes, those are the similarities that we get, and I think in sort of putting it in much more a loose term or easy term. It's what they call practice makes perfect, and practice gives you confidence. So as the more you practice, like I was saying, when we were going up and coming down, going up and coming, it was practice because I had climbed, I'd never climbed to those conditions before. So the confidence was such that I was growing every day. So the practice helped me a lot to build the confidence and still think and see it doable because I was walking at places I'd never walked before in my life. So that was that. So it was very helpful. I think when we look at it, sometimes it doesn't, we sort of feel, why are they saying I must do it again? It's because it is on this, because it's when you have got to do it many times that you become confident and it becomes easier and then it becomes second nature. So practice, practice, practice. And then we practice going up mountains. And that's why even running a marathon, it is about practicing first. And then once you've practiced long enough and feel confident that I think I can run a marathon, I believe I can run a marathon, then you sign up for one and then you go and run it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, isn't it? So here we go then. We're coming towards the end of our interview. So I'm going to ask you some quick fire questions. Give me 3 examples of your skills. I would like you to tell me 3 skills that you think you have that are practical skills and 3 skills that you think you have that are emotional skills, you know, or personality traits that you think helped you to achieve what you've achieved. So what are your 3 practical skills that you think you have?
My 3 practical skills, which I think I have, which were identified when I started going to the wilderness, is I'm physically fit. It doesn't matter whether it came from years of training. I'm physically fit, and I know that, and I am practically able to do anything, climb, and because I grew up climbing trees, so and then up to rocks. So physically, I know that, and physically, I have stamina. I've a lot of stamina that I won't give up easily. I've got a lot of endurance. So those are the 3. I'm physically strong. I have lots of endurance and stamina, and I don't give up that easy. And that's I could only identify that when I was practically and physically walking up on a wilderness hike.
Yeah. And what are your 3 emotional skills? What do you think your 3 personality traits are that, or 3 of them that have helped you to achieve what you've achieved?
My three personalities, character traits, which I have. I have a lot of determination. I have an attitude that is so positive that I don't believe in any impossibility, and I'm very patient. A lot of patience in me. I've got it in loads. I don't know. I'm so patient that I don't get frustrated by anything. It doesn't matter how long it takes for me to do anything. I'll be patient enough, knowing that at the end I will get the chance to do and achieve what I've set out to achieve, and lots of resilience as well. And for me, the biggest I have is just I have a very strong mindset.
Yeah.
Mindset is so very strong.
Some might say stubborn in a good
Very
way.
only. And I accept that because I've been told not once, many times that you're stubborn, and I say yes, I know that, and I know if I wasn't stubborn, I won't have done and achieved
No.
what I've achieved. So
Yeah.
some of us have to be that stubborn, and I am.
You put it to good use. You put it to good use. That's amazing.
Yes.
What do you think can hold a person back from achieving their dream?
What can hold a person back? I would start first by saying themselves.
Yeah.
Because now this is me having grown to understand that there's nothing that can hold you except yourself. But to 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 younger people who have not grown to the level where I am today, what can hold themselves, it's certainly the environment where they are. It is resources, because lack of resources can also hold you back. There are many children out there in the world who I know don't have the means to go to school, and some don't even have schools, and some don't even have the financial ability to afford schools. So resources can also play, and lack of support. Having no support can also hold you back. And support comes from either your parents or your siblings or your cousins or your friends, and it's them cheering you along. If you don't have someone to cheer you or to give you a pat on the shoulder and say you can do it, and so that can hold you back as well. And because self-belief sometimes comes from hearing from someone saying, I think you are a marathon runner, or you can sprint or be a sprinter, or you know what, I think you can be a teacher one day, and then therefore you just unleash this potential. But if you don't have that support, that can hold you back.
Yeah, we need our friends, don't we? Working together is always, it's good to be the person who cheers someone else on, and it's good to have people to cheer you on. I think that's really important. So just two more little questions then. How can young people find out what their skills and talents are?
Yes, and I must say before I answer that, it is very important for all of us to find our skills and our natural talents. Now I'm saying natural because I don't, it is easy to train. You can possibly train for something that you are not naturally talented to, but the biggest that you need to work on is what are your natural abilities and talents, and how can you identify with those? For me, it is just being physically able to go to do stuff, particularly nature, or whether it's hiking or it's outdoors. For me, that's where you can identify skills and talents through doing activities
Mm,
and outdoors.
yeah,
Indoors, there's nothing much. I don't think you can identify with your natural skills by sitting in front of a little computer or a tablet. It can help maybe with your intelligence or anything, but you need to be physically know how capable you are. Can you run down a hill? Can you run on a flat ground? Or can you run 10 meters or 100 meters? Can you walk uphill? Are you able to just push yourself when things are tough? And those you can only identify by physically and practically going outdoors to do that. So young boys and girls, get out there,
yeah.
play as much, explore, and try and identify
Mm,
what is it that you have naturally as your skills and your talents. And if you do that, then you will be able to find what are the things that you would like to do in your life as you grow up, and what would you want to be, do, and have. And if you don't know that, then it is difficult for you to
mm.
make a decision about what your life is going to be.
No, I agree. I think you've got to try everything, haven't you? You've got to get out there, experience things,
Yeah,
hands dirty, go out in
yeah.
the woods. I do think that's really important, finding your natural talents, and then finding things that will help you to use those natural talents. I think that's a
Ah,
point. So
it is for all of us, and it helps us because I mean at some stage you will find there are many people that have been sort of misguided. I would say that, or have not been able to know that the most important thing that is just to identify with themselves,
mm,
know your strengths, know your skills, know what you are gifted in. And we all are gifted. We are all born with natural talents. It's a matter of being able to unleash them. But before you can unleash your natural talent and abilities, you've got to identify. And only you can do it.
mm,
Only, well, some people can look up at you and tell you, I think you are talented into that. But if you don't believe it, then you won't. So it's important that you identify with that talent and that ability yourself as a young child growing up, as a young boy and a young boy and a young girl. It is
yeah.
important to do that.
Definitely. And we're all so unique, aren't we? And that's a wonderful thing. We're all very different. And I think that's what makes life so wonderful. So before you leave us today, Sibu, what are your 3 top tips for a happy and successful life? And we're not talking about success just in terms of money or things, but what do you think would be your 3 top tips for a happy life or a contented life?
My 3 top tips for a happy life. Number one is to know who you are. If you know who you are, you will live a happy life. And then, secondly, it is to know that you are here on the planet Earth and not as a mistake. You should be here and you are meant to be here. If you recognize with that, you will be happy, because the third and final will be each one of us is here to contribute on the planet Earth, and that is to serve planet Earth, whether it is by helping other people or helping the planet. you are here to serve. So you belong, we all belong here. Those are my three. If you're able to recognize with those, you will live your life happily.
Wonderful. I love that. I love you. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sibu. And there are lots of follow-up activities on the page for you to do, for you to help you find your own mountain, to follow your dreams, and to follow Sibu's motto for life is a life without limits. Isn't that right, Sibu?
It is, yes. We all are born with, well, unlimited potential. We have no limits. We can do anything that we want to do. We can achieve anything that we put our minds to, but we must also know that it takes the effort to make it happen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely, certainly. Well, thank you very much indeed for giving us the opportunity and to listen to us. We hope you learn.
Wonderful. Thank you. Right, that's all good. So I'll just, now what I'll do is I'll edit that bit off, put that somewhere else. Yeah. So are you happy to do the first podcast and then or do you need to go?
No, not going anywhere. We can.
So if we do the first podcast and then I'll convert the videos thing, and then perhaps we can do a couple tomorrow, and then we're ahead of ourselves. Is that all right?
That's perfect.
That was awesome. That was so good. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that on a web page with some photos of you going up the mountain. I'm going to do the skills and strengths test for the kids to try. I'm going to do some facts about Everest and where it is in the world and some maps and all of that. So if I was teaching now, I'd be going,
yay! I know, absolutely. No, it sounds great. I think that's the way to do it. Well done.
My gosh,
I can't wait.
I know. Well, we just have to get. I was talking to a friend of mine. She's had quite a tough upbringing. Her upbringing wasn't particularly rich or wealthy, but there was a lot of. Her family are quite, what we would say, a little bit rough around the edges.
Right.
There's a lot of love there, but there's a lot of,
I know.
And she's come through that. She's the only person in her family to ever get a degree. She's the only person to really value education at all. And now she's trained to be a teacher, and she's awesome. She's, because she kind of gets where these kids come from in sort of quite tough, rough and ready kind of upbringing, as it were. She's just amazing. But she's in her newly qualified year, and she's 38, so she's taken her a while. And she said she said the amount of time, she said, I'm following a scheme and ticking off the boxes and thinking, this is rubbish. There's no juice to this. She said, so I basically march through it, tick the boxes, and then do what I want to do. So I said
yeah, but there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that have come to realize that that is what it is, and it's like, okay, if the system pushes me to tick the boxes, I would just do that, and then once I've ticked that, and then just move on to find myself.
I know.
And
She used to work with me when I was teaching, and she said, we're doing RE at the moment. She said, and I've got this thing, they're colouring in palm leaves. She said, I'm like, what on earth is the point? She said, I remember when she did RE with me, we had to learn about festivals. We were doing a wedding. We were learning about I got all the kids dressed up. Someone was the bride, someone had to propose. We had champagne at like we did the whole thing. And I just think, why would you not do it like that? I don't. Anyway, that's something I could talk about for hours. So we'll do podcast title 1. So this is just the audio that I'll take off this recording.
Perfect.
So this is for, let's get rid of that. Making all kinds of noises at me. There we go. Right. Okay. So this is for, okay. Right, let me just get my head in where I'm going now with this. Okay, so this one, let's have a look. So this one's probably this will be about 40 minutes. That'd be all right.
Okay, that's perfect.
Let's see how we go with it. Okay, so, right, let me think. Okay. Hello there. Welcome to Write Smart, the Creative Learning Podcast. I'm Karen Stanley. I'm a former teacher, an author, and I coach people to write their books, to realise their writing dreams. And I'm also passionate about hands-on and experiential learning because I feel it's the only way to be truly inclusive. And I think creative curriculum is well, for me, it's the only way to go. So throughout this podcast, we'll be talking lots about how creative learning can help children to learn, help them to develop, and the benefits to their cognitive, not only to their cognitive development, but to their resilience, to their creativity, and the way that they grow and develop as people, to live happy lives, following their dreams and their passions and their talents, playing to their strengths. I'm really delighted to be joined over the next few weeks by the fabulous Sibusiso Vilane. He's going to tell you all about himself in a moment. I met this gentleman on a clubhouse room. It was quite by chance. If you believe in serendipity, I think this was totally what this was. I listened to Sibu talk, and I just thought, my goodness me, we need to collaborate. We need to do something together. So I'm delighted that he's decided to join me for the next few podcasts to talk about his journey, to talk about his achievements, which are quite fabulous, but also to relate that back to how we can use his experience, to how we can use his achievements to kind of inform the way we deliver education. I feel that education has become far too much of a box ticking exercise, and I don't think that's the way forward at all. So Sibu is going to talk to us now and share some of his insights, and then we can talk about how that relates back to education. So hello, Sibu, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, Corinne. Thank you very much indeed for having me. How exciting and how excited I am to be part of it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh my goodness! I think we're gonna conquer the world together, you and I reckon.
So, yes, we are. Yes, we are.
So Sibu, if you could just tell us, our listeners, a little bit who you are and what you did.
Thank you. I am Sibusiso Vilane. I am a South African. I am an African. I am a citizen of the world. I won't forget that. Nelson Mandela taught me to say that. And it just makes me feel excited to know and just to know that I belong to the world as well. But I was born east of Johannesburg, about 3.5 hours drive in a small town. Well, it's becoming a city now, called Nelspruit, and it is in the very southern tip of the Kruger National Park. For people who might know, well, it tends to be the biggest Kruger National Park in the world, one of the few in the world, but it's our iconic national park. I'm very in the southern tip of it, just before the border between Mozambique and South Africa. I started my journey when I was about 4 years old, because it was the stage where my parents separated, which prompted my mother, who was Swazi, to take me and my sister to the small kingdom of Swaziland. And her thinking around that time was it would be very impossible for her to bring up two children as a single mom who didn't have a job, who was never qualified for anything in a very hostile South Africa, which was still under apartheid then. But then when she moved us to Swaziland, she would find that it was difficult for her to find anything where her home was, and she left out with my grandmother and moved to a city which called Mbaban. And the first 8 years of my life, my mother was away, and my sister and I were being looked after by my grandmother. So that's to say, from the age of 5, I wasn't at the preschool, and when I was about 7 years old, people came to my grandmother and asked her to have me as a little head boy, which I did for about 3 years and up until the age of 9. Then my stepdad came in, and my mother had met this wonderful man. So my stepdad looked at me and my sister, and said, I would like to give them an opportunity to go to school. And my sister and I appreciated that gesture and worked hard. And I finished high school when I was 21 years old, because I started quite late. But it's not too late to start. It's starting that is important. And I walked out of high school with my O levels in my hand, and I knew then that it was my time to just take my life and be responsible, and it was in my hands, as Nelson Mandela would say it. Then I started working in a construction company for about 2 years, which wasn't pleasant. I hated it, but I stayed that long because I needed to find an alternative. So it was through finding that alternative that I got an interview in a nature reserve in a wilderness game park, and I got a job as a tourist officer and game ranger. So it is at this place and I met someone who talked to me about Everest, and I'd never wanted to climb Everest when I was young. I never knew what Everest was, and I never knew where it was located. But one day he said to me, "I think you have what it takes to climb Everest." And I tried to talk him off that idea, thinking that we Africans don't have the interest to climb big mountains like Everest. But then he challenged me by saying he thought Africans have the ability to do it, and said if I had the resources, because I'd said that I thought it was near impossible to afford it financially. So he said, if you had the resources to climb Everest, would you do it? And that is what led me to make the decision to say to him, yes, I'll do it. And when I said that, I had no clue of how tall Mount Everest was. I'd never read a picture, I never seen a picture, nor read a book about Everest. But there's something that just made me to say yes to that. I thought that I could do it, and I believed that I could do it. And I thought I wanted to send a message to the world and Africans that anyone can do it if they wanted to. And yes, so this now brings me to what I've done. I've climbed and summited Mount Everest two times. The first was in 2003, which was a personal journey to just send a message to the world. And then I went again 2 years later in 2005 and summited it by the north side. And I did that for charity, where I wanted to honor the people that have had me with my education, just to help children that needed educational needs. So I've been to Mount Everest twice and summited twice. So that's what I've done. And thank you for
Amazing.
giving me the opportunity to introduce myself that way.
That's amazing. Did you still I wanted to ask you, did you still have to pinch yourself like when you were at the top thinking, have I actually really just done this? I mean, I bet you still
I,
sometimes can't quite believe it, can you?
I did actually have to pinch myself, because what had happened, Karen, was we had done pretty much everything that we needed to be able to have an attempt on the Mount Everest. And when we got to a weather wind opportunity, we went up and we got blown off in a wind and snowstorm, and we drew back down to base camp and sat for 10 frustrating days. And then, lucky enough, clear weather opportunities were given to us. So my team and I went for what I thought was going to be our third and final attempt of Everest. And it wasn't to be like that or as such, because we were probably closer or near the summit when Everest again that hour stood up and just gave us another blizzard and a windstorm that threatened to kill us by blowing us off the mountain. So, but sensibly, being with people who were experienced expedition leaders who had been there, they just said, no, it can't be summited in these conditions. Therefore, we need to go back down. So it was devastating there. I thought at that moment, that is what made me to pinch myself when it happened. I thought with that second attempt, I was going home without a summit.
Yeah.
But we went down to Camp 2 and we sat for 4 days waiting patiently for the weather to clear. And our expedition leader surprised us, saying we still have got enough food and enough oxygen so we can go up. And we went. And this time, I think, in as much as with all the self belief that I had, that I could do it, but because of the weather conditions, I don't think I was 100% quite sure we were going to do it.
No.
So when I saw ourselves progressing to the high camps, and I saw us start that night of the 25th, and when I saw us in the early morning hours of the 26th of May, edging closer to the summit, and then we got to the top, I couldn't contain myself, because it felt unreal. And that's why it's I mean, from the summit, I remember very well, vividly, from the summit, I was just uncontrollable. I was just crying beyond, because I could not believe. Every time I thought about it, like, Sibusiso, did you really do this? And I looked around me, and it was a big mountain. I'm like, yeah, you were. There was no other mountain higher than where you were. So you've done it. And it took me about a week to come to terms with it, that I'd
Yeah.
actually summited Mount Everest, coming from Africa, a bushfed boy who wore bare feet until the age of 10, never was at school until that age. And now here I was, having done something incredible, come something
The
remarkable.
first black
So it
African
took
as
a
well,
long
weren't
time.
you, to climb? The first black African to climb.
I
Yeah,
was, because
amazing.
up until that decision, there had never been any other black person from anywhere in the world that had the opportunity
Yeah.
and the desire to do it. And so when I did it, it became a first, and I still feel very proud and humbled that I was able to do it. Judging from the fact that I'd never been a mountaineer when I was young, but that's the story that inspires me today.
Awesome. That's awesome. It's just and this part of this podcast is about finding your own mountain, isn't it? Because not everybody's mountain is going to be. I mean, to climb Mount Everest, but we've all got. I mean, I remember when I trained to be a teacher. It's not it wasn't climbing Everest, but I was a single parent. My child was about 2 years old. We ended up in a really dingy flat with water running down the walls, and I just thought, gosh, this isn't how I planned my life. This wasn't my life plan. And
Yeah.
and I'd left school and I trained to be a hairdresser, and I thought, well, this isn't going to really sort of cut it. I want better for my life. So I decided to go and do a degree, which wasn't easy, because obviously I had a young child, I didn't have a lot of money, I didn't, so I had to kind of, he had to go to, a preschool while I went to college, and I worked at the weekends and all of that kind of thing. And then when I finished my degree, I did a year of teacher training. And I remember I was doing it up in London in quite an inner city. It was a tough area. There was a lot of poverty. There were a lot of, family issues. There was a lot of sort of addiction and unemployment, a lot of, it was a really it's quite a tough area, but I loved it for that, because it was a real challenge. I quite like a challenge. But I remember the actual logistics of that. I did a PGCE, which is a postgraduate certificate in education.
Okay.
My son was 6 then, so I think my degree took 4 years, and then a year to do my teacher training. And I remember I would bundle him up in a blanket in the morning, would run round to my neighbour's house, plonk him on the sofa, run back, drive to London. She'd take him to school. I'd drive back from London, pick him up. And it was like, oh my gosh, when I look back now, I physically don't know how I managed it. I used to work in a pub on a Sunday to make a bit of money. I was in the library or studying on this big old computer of a night time. And it was really, really hard work. And a couple of nights a week, my mum would look after my son, just because I was so exhausted. I couldn't put one foot in front of the other. But that was my mountain, and I still feel a real sense of achievement from that, because it was done against the odds a little bit. And I think sometimes with education nowadays, especially when we try and I was 26 when I went and did my degree. I didn't have any A levels. I hadn't done it the normal route, whatever that might. I've done it really sort of back to front, really. But I think it made me a better teacher. I think it made me more resilient. I think it made me feel mighty proud of myself. And I think the thing with education is, when we try and assume that everybody's mountain is the same, and that everybody's going to climb the same path and go the same journey and follow the same, I think that's a really dangerous thing, because you don't, I left school, I went to hairdressing college. You'll laugh at this, because my mum didn't know how to do my hair, and I was fed up with it. That's the reason I went. I didn't know what else to do, and I hated school, and I wanted to leave. So, my mountain came a little bit later, when I sort of discovered, one, I had a real reason to do it, because I had a young boy and I wanted him to have a good life, and I wanted to achieve for him. But also I'd sort of found my niche where I hadn't. And I think when I went to school, I went to a grammar school, so I was reasonably bright, whatever that means. I kind of veer away from that. But I don't think we were ever really helped to find out what really made us tick. It was like, you did your writing, you did your reading, you did your French. I remember we used to do PE. I was hopeless at PE. I think I spent 3 years looking after the coats and the jewellery, because I was rubbish, so I just didn't take part. But that's now I still hate PE. But we weren't really encouraged to find our own mountain, and I think that's so important in education, just in general. And I think
it is,
because those ones that fit the mold, in inverted commas, who can bob along in the middle and are quite good at English and are quite good at maths, and they haven't got any behaviour kind of challenges, or they haven't got any learning challenges, they will just bob along and they'll sort of be all right. But it's those ones that don't quite fit that mold that I worry for. And also, I think if you make learning more about pursuing your passions, it will include everybody. So
Yeah.
it will include the children who are quite capable, but it will also include the children who perhaps don't fit into that box. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%. I would certainly agree with that because um, mountains, the way we use mountains, in fact, in my culture, which is Swazi and in Zulu, which is because we are closely related, we do have a phrase in our own native language which translates to life is a mountain.
Yeah.
So if you have life, you have a mountain to climb, but you can only identify with your mountain, so yourself. So this is to say, each one of us have we end up coining this phrase that each one of us have got their own Everest, and you
Yeah.
said that your Everest was that, and another person has their own Everest. What we mean by that is your life is your life, and therefore it will be your mountain to climb, whatever it is, and that will be from what are your aspirations, what are your dreams, what are your ambitions,
Mm.
what are the things that you resonate with, what is it that you want to do or be, do, and have in your life, and those are the mountain, your mountain. So if people identify with that, therefore the better. And I unfortunately the education system is such a letdown to the many people out there because it does not let you explore your own Everest using your own natural abilities, and that is where the challenge is. Because it took me a long time to identify with what life means to me, what is my mountain, and I started straight after high school. I got into this game reserve where I worked for 7 years as a tourist officer and game ranger. I loved the job because there's a difference, and a job and your own passion are two different
Yeah.
things. It is good to have a job. You might have been a job and it is not your passion, and people are able to sort of disguise that, like, oh, I love this job. But your passion is the one thing that really gives you meaning, that gives you fulfillment
Mm.
when you've done that. And that cannot be as a result of a job or a paying job, and it doesn't have to. For your passion can either pay or it doesn't pay, as long as at the end it fulfills you. And that is what you need to try and pursue as a person. So I enjoyed my game ranging job as a tourist officer. I worked in a very peaceful, very healthy environment, and I got to learn about animals. It gave me an opportunity to meet people, but it was a job. Yeah, it was a very nice job, if I can put it that way. So I only was able to identify with my passion and what I love, what fulfills me, when I stood up in front of an audience and shared about my Everest experience, my journey to the top of Mount Everest. And when a young girl stood up, she didn't even stand up. She came to me with a little piece of paper where she had written a message which said, "Well, Sibusiso, thank you very much for coming to speak at my place of work, because while listening to your story, I felt so motivated and so inspired that I decided that I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to pursue my passion. I've always wanted to go overseas, just to explore. And when I heard what your story, I realized that I've been holding myself back. And that was the day I identified with what my passion is, which is to inspire people to dream and to believe in themselves and go beyond their limitations. And that is what drives me. That
Yeah.
is what will send me back to a Mount Everest. So I've identified with that. And unfortunately, that couldn't be taught at school. I couldn't be taught at school about that. It does not come from a textbook. It came from experience.
Mm.
And then that is what I could resonate with. So it's a question of go out there and identify with your own Everest. Maybe it is by climbing a mountains that you find yours. Maybe it's by sitting in a classroom and teach, or maybe it's by pounding the streets, running on a marathon where somehow you feel that something that you love. It has to happen somewhere. You've got your own unique ability and your own uniqueness and your own unique talents, and that is what we need to try and mold and work around. And unfortunately, the education systems all over the world don't allow that.
I know, isn't it a shame? And I think we've become so concerned that children reach this holy grail of whatever it is, like we've got to tick this box, they've got to have learnt this, they've got to have learnt that, they've got to have learnt that, and we march through those boxes. I don't believe that just because you've done it, you've really done it, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like we've done that, but what's the learning that's happened there? And I think it takes quite a bit of courage and quite a bit of bravery, because you sort of have to ditch that list and have faith that all of, and don't get me wrong, I'm a writer, so I have a huge passion for literacy. I feel it's a real, if you can't read and write, you are very much sort of almost handicapped in life, aren't you? It can really hold you back. So I don't for one second believe that isn't important, but I don't believe it's everything. I don't believe all good learning needs to be written down. In fact, I strongly believe it shouldn't all be written down.
No.
But I also think you have to have the faith that if you go out and do stuff, whatever that stuff might be, and it's about lots of experience and lots of hands-on exploration and investigation, all of that writing will happen as a wonderful byproduct of the stuff that you've done. Because I used to say to the kids when I would do creative writing workshops and that, your ideas are much more important than your handwriting. They're much more important than you putting it on the page, because if you've got no ideas, your pencil is empty, isn't it? It's sort of like, you're trying to write with an empty pencil. So I think it takes bravery. I think it's one of the reasons I couldn't be a head teacher, because I'd spend so much time in trouble, because I wouldn't do anything on the list. But I just think, and I also think in these days of sort of, if there's a massive kind of emphasis on mental health, and some of our young people, we're aspiring to something that almost doesn't exist. You've got to look a certain way, you've got to wear certain things, you've got to be a certain shape, but all of these things are quite superficial, I believe.
They are,
and they don't bring happiness. I love going shopping like the next girl. I love a bit of retail therapy, but that kind of hit that you get is quite short-lived. Once you've gone home and tried your new shoes on and realised they don't fit and they didn't look as nice in the shop, you're kind of done, aren't you? But it's the things that are really inside of you. Those, like for me, writing is something that I just kind of feel I need to do, and I think I've always needed to do it, but I didn't realise, because again, you do need, but you have to follow that path, don't you? You have to.
You have to.
I liken everything to food. It's kind of like tapas. Like the best meal, I love tapas, but tapas is sort of like you try a little bit of everything, and that overall effect is what gives you, you know what you do like, know what you don't like, know what you're good at, know what fills that kind of the gap inside of you. And I don't think, like you say, education doesn't allow us to do that. And I think people need to be brave and just trust that if you follow a creative path, the results will be the same. They'll still be able to do all of those things, but they'll just be more fulfilled, they'll be happier, they'll be more motivated, I believe, anyway.
Well, absolutely. Well, I think you finished with that, because that's what we need. We need a motivated generation of people, and that cannot be from a book, in my opinion, because motivation comes from within. It is self-motivation that makes things happen in a person's lives, and if you take that away from them, then that's why we probably have lots of children today who don't have aims, who don't have hope, and not because they're not capable. They're very intelligent, and then the technology that's out there is just making them very clever. But the only thing is that they are limited by the way we do. We are overprotective. We don't let them explore, because it's all about safety today, and unfortunately, life for an individual has to be experiential. You've got to experience things, and lots of things together, and so that you are able to choose what resonates with you. What is it that you love, and what gives you energy? What is it that you don't like and you don't love? Because it's important to know between the two. But if you're not exposed to to activities that will allow you to identify with I don't actually like this. I
Mm,
don't like playing soccer,
mm,
or I don't like playing sport at all. And all I want is just to be creative. I want to sit down and use my hands to craft things,
mm.
and or whatever. Be practical about it. So, but once, if you're not exposed to such activities that will make you to sort of define who you are and what you are by following a curriculum that is fixed for everybody, which is exactly the same for everyone. Well, that's why we will have these grumpy children today who don't have any clue what they want about their future.
Mm,
Because the fact remains, we are different. We are not the same, and we will have different tastes of what we want life to be, what we believe life is, and that is purely based on the fact that when you are born uniquely who you are, and no one is like you, and therefore it is by chance that you will like everything that everyone else is doing, and it will be quite rare that you will want everyone to follow the same career as everyone
yeah,
else's. Otherwise, life won't be as interesting as it is.
no,
That is why the diversity of it, I think that's the one thing we miss. We miss that we are so diverse that it is upon us to try and make the school curriculum, whatever they call them, or programs, to be as diverse as possible, because we are trying to serve a diverse community.
yeah. Do you know what though I think is interesting? Like you and I couldn't be more different. We're born on opposite sides of the world. You're a mountain climber. I'm absolutely not a mountain climber. And we're very different in our approaches, in our experiences, in our upbringing, in our, all of that. But we have some real common connections, as in,
Yeah.
we both believe in this kind of hands-on learning. We both
Mhm.
believe in pursuing your passions. So even though we're all different, we've still got. So it's that whole thing about, if we give all these experiences, they might be different, but there will still be skills that transcend everything. Like
Yes.
that are multifaceted, or whatever the word is. Like one skill will serve a lot of different purposes. So
Yeah.
just because, and that goes back to the thing. So if you give the children all of these experience, the children will get, each child will get something different from it. So in a good way. There was quite a drive a few years ago about something called Failure to Thrive, and that
Mhm.
was, all of my teaching was done in quite areas of deprivation. So
Yeah.
there was poverty, there was addiction, there was sort of dysfunction within the family. There might have been, history of sort of parents who were poorly educated, who maybe never worked, didn't really know what that looked like. And what happened was that the children were growing up with this. They didn't actually know what was out there. So they didn't aim for anything because they didn't know what they could aim for, because their world was quite small. Their
Mhm.
world was quite restricted. They sort of followed the path and this is a very generalized kind of statement, but the whole thing about the failure to thrive was, if you don't know what you're capable of, if you
Yeah.
don't know what's out there, it's like I'm quite fascinated by the whole setting of intentions and manifestation and all of that kind of thing. And people seem to think it's like, oh, you get a magic wand, you wave it and you get everything you want. It ain't
No.
like that. That's not what it's about.
No.
But what it is, it's about having a clear idea of what for you, the top of your mountain, the top of Mount
Yeah.
Everest, that was your goal. But it's the same in life. If you don't know what the opportunities are, if you don't know what's available, if you don't know that if you get a great job, or if you do something that's fulfilling, you can, like sometimes sort of youngsters. I tutored a young boy who had grown up in foster care, and he was a teenager, so he was a bit stroppy and angry anyway, and he was a bit cross with the world. And I sort of said to him, well, if you're waiting for the world to be fair, you'll be an old man and you won't have done anything. It won't work like that. And
No.
he was
Yeah.
really sort of searching for something. He was saying, well, look at Pablo Escobar. He was really cool. And I said, he died. He was shot. He had money he couldn't spend because he had to bury it. He didn't, this
Yeah.
glamorous life that you think he had. He didn't have a glam. But him not knowing who else to pin his aspirations on, him not knowing
Yes.
what was out there, meant that he thought, well, this guy did loads of cool stuff and had loads of money, but he didn't understand
Yeah.
what the world had to offer him. Do you see what I mean? I know that's quite an extreme example, but I
Yeah,
really
but
believe.
still, but it is still very relevant. We've got to look at it that way, because it is what it is. We've got this kids, these young people who just sit and think that things are just going to happen. They forget that that guy that we're looking up to, who's full of all the glamour, who's got all the monies, in a way or the other, he had a vision
Mm.
of himself at doing that, and he has put in some kind of effort to be able to live
Yes.
that kind of lifestyle. So if you are going to sit back and think, it's there will be some magic that is going to happen, and I will be like that person, no, it won't happen. You've got to put in the effort,
Yeah.
and you've got to have the idea in your mind to say, okay, I want to be Sibusiso Vilane, a mountaineer, and this is how I'm going to do it. Or if you look at another mountaineer, you will say, well, it wasn't Edmund Hillary who summited Everest in 1953 with Tenzing Norgay. I would like to be like them, to climb mountains. It is you, not them. You're looking up to them. So, but you are going to have the put in the effort. You are going to have the motivation. You've got to be the person that's determined to do it. You are the one that is going to fall and get up and keep going,
Mm.
and knowing that it might not happen the one time you tried. But if you don't know that your success will be so frustrating, your success will have a lot of ups and downs,
Yeah.
practically, then you won't go far, because you don't know that. Have the you won't have the courage to go out there and face the world. That's why people will hold back and sit back, and then they're frustrated, and then they're living an unhappy life,
Mm.
because they fear. It is good to know what is out there and be exposed to all that is out there, so that when you sit back, you know there's so much. Unfortunately, we don't. I mean, people ask me even today, this is a little example. People ask me today, what's out there for you to do anymore? You've done all of this. And I said, well, because of the exposure that I've had, the privilege to see the world, I've reconciled that there's so much to do, and I have so little time to live to be able to do all of it. So it's a question of, why do I stop? I don't want to stop, because
No.
there's so much to do. Because I know what is out there, but if you don't know what is out there, what are you going to do? Where are you going to get the
Drift.
determination and the motivation to go? You can't. So that is what we are doing to our little children and to young people mainly. We're just holding them back, because they are not exposed to the bigger world. They're only living in this little bubble, and
Yeah.
that's all they know. It is so sad when you see that. But that's why we do what we do. That's why we are speaking today. We are
Yeah.
just trying to help them to say there is so much to do. You need to
Yeah.
identify with yourself. It
Yeah.
starts with you. It starts with you.
Absolutely. And I
Know who
think
you
it's
are.
creative thinkers that get things done, isn't it? Creativity, being able to think outside the box, being resilient, finding solutions to problems, kind of, and it takes a bit of courage, doesn't it? If you stick
It
your head
does.
above the parapet, you're likely to get shot at a few times. But it's that courage that will bring the rewards. And I think as educators, it's our job to make sure we allow the children to we need to allow them to fail. Not fail is a horrible word, but we need to allow them to make mistakes and to learn from
Yes,
those
that's the
mistakes, and
way.
to kind of
Yes.
discover and get better. And like me with PE, I'm never going to like PE. It is not my thing. I'm not very good at it. I can't throw and catch a ball, but I have discovered that I really like walking. Now, my
Yeah.
experiences at school taught me
Yes.
walking. I don't think so. And
Yeah.
we did a minor hike compared to yours, but we did a 9-mile hike on Tuesday this week, and that was probably the furthest I've hiked. And it was in the Peak District, so it was up and down. It was quite a hilly, rocky kind of terrain. For me, that was
Yes.
like. And I set off with that thinking, oh God, I've never really walked this far before, and I don't know if I'll be up to it. Of the group, I was the person who had the least aches and pains the next day. In fact, I didn't. So I was like, come on.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but then I've been walking probably every day with my dog through lockdown and whatnot, and probably 5 miles a day. So very gradually, without even realizing it, because I was
Yes.
doing something that I loved, I've built up my resilience. If you told me to go
Of
to the
course.
gym every day for 5 days, I'd have told you
No,
no, thanks very much. If
no.
you'd have told me to, so I've done something I loved, and already that's built up my resilience. It's built up my fitness. It's built up my
Yeah.
capability and it didn't feel like a chore. And that's the same with education. I think if we give the children all of these experiences, that I think all you need is a love of learning. It doesn't matter what you learn, because if you
Yeah.
have a love of learning, you will pursue learning, you'll be open to learning, and
Yes.
you'll be open to that kind of exploration and excitement and awe and wonder. It's the love
Of
of
course,
learning we need
absolutely,
to foster,
absolutely.
I think.
Well, it is. It is definitely. You because it is through learning that we grow, and it is through learning that we get exposure to what is out there, and that is why it is very important for all of us just to love learning and learning about yourself. In fact, that's what I said about when I went to mountains. When I go to mountains, I learn a lot about myself. I learned a lot about mountains themselves, that they've got so much energy in them. And I've learned that they have an energy to either make or break you, because they do. And I've learned a lot about other people. And I've learned so much by going. So learning is a very critical part of our lives. And if we don't learn, we don't grow. So that's very critical. We need, each one of us has to have the ability and the love to learn. And it doesn't matter what you learn, but you've got to.
Yeah. So just a few questions then. Who was your greatest inspiration? Was there one person, or was there a few?
Uh, Growing up, it takes a long time to understand a person that becomes either your inspiration, your role model, and it's when you understand that, oh, this is what it means. So the one person, that's one person for me. Will always be my mother,
Mhm.
who was uneducated and illiterate, not qualified for any job. But she was a visionary in the
Yeah.
fact that without any formal type of education, she valued basic education. And I say basic because when I walked out of high school, when I with my O levels, my mother was on top of the world, quite literally.
Bless her.
She was like it was like my son has graduated to a level that I believed, and I've been working towards to. And it was so fulfilling to her, such that when the first 2 years I didn't get a job, because she thought with my little qualification I'd get a job, and I was working in a construction company, she would just feel very miserable, and she was just upset. She
Yeah.
was like, "No, I can't have a child who's so educated that can just work as a manual laborer in a construction company." But because of her visionary and the way she put all her efforts in making my sister and I grow up one day as confident young people who would want to have a different role in our lives and just take our lives. She's the one that instilled in me the self belief that one day I will be able to build a house for the family.
Mm.
And it was just by verbally saying it. So she's my greatest and biggest inspiration. I think she's passed on now, but she still influences the way I do things. And when I think about her, I said, if my mother could come through all of that, and then to
Yeah.
produce a me,
Yeah.
then yeah,
But I mean,
then
that's
she is.
beautiful. But also, doesn't it say, she didn't have a formal education, but she still had a love of learning. She still had a vision. She still had a dream, didn't she? She
Yeah,
still, education takes so many forms, I think. And, I
it
think
does. Yeah,
that's wonderful.
yes, yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I mean, that is what she had, and that is how she channeled all her energies towards giving us the education, and most of it she educated us herself, because
Yeah.
she taught me how to put a span of oxen together, go to ox plow, and just the biggest lesson I learned from her was it was in your hands. You needed to do something
Yeah.
to have something and to get something, and it was that. So that is
Yeah.
what I've lived my life by. You've got to do something
Yeah.
and with your hands
Yeah.
to have something. It wasn't like you sit back and wait and say someone will come in and put food on the table.
Yeah.
You've got to put in the energy, and that was the biggest lesson, a valuable lesson I learned from my mother.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so here we go then. Here's a question for you. Do you think we all have what it takes to follow our dreams? And if so, why? But why do some people, because there's so many people out there who sort of get trapped and don't get me wrong, I'm not an idealist. We all have to pay our bills, we all have to eat. You know what it's like growing up without food. It's not funny, is it? So there are certain things that we have to, sometimes we just have to do to kind of make ends meet. But there are definitely people in the world who are very tenacious, who will kind of keep going, who will just keep driving forward to fulfill their dreams. And then there are people who absolutely don't do that. Do you think we all have the potential? Do you think some people don't? Or why do some people not do that?
My my sole belief, and my I believe with all my heart that all of us have the greatest of potentials to achieve our dreams, but it's a question of, do you have a dream really? And if you have the dream, is it a dream that resonates with you? That's why again we go back to education to say, is the education channeling you towards the things you want to be, the things you want to have, the things you want to do? Because um, the people that tend not to see their dreams coming to be realized or materialized are people that when they realize that what they are trying to achieve, which they think or thought was their dream, is not happening easy, then they are easily sidetracked and easily put off the idea, and then they let go, and they give up, and then at the end it does not materialize. But if this was your dream, something that you really wanted to do, you don't give up.
No.
People get surprised how much energy you get and how many times you fail. If it is your dream, you don't. So those, I believe that those that don't see their dreams coming to reality are people that who have had the wrong dreams. They had
Yeah.
someone else's dreams, and you can never achieve someone else's dreams, because if it is your dream, you get the motivation, self-motivation, the self-determination, the resilience, because it comes from within. And it's a question of asking yourself, why do you want to do the thing? Because for me, that is a very critical, important question. When you think about your dream, of whatever it is, you ask yourself why. Because it is when you think about the why, that particular dream, why do you want to do that, that you will remember when things are tough, that it is, I want to do this because of that. So without a stronger why, that particular dream, then it becomes near impossible for you to stay the course, to fight the storms, to fight the blizzards, to fight the setbacks. But if you know with a clear why, it is easy for you to just stay in there and be patient and be as resilient, and then stick fighting until you achieve that which you believe in. So it is a question of, do you really believe in your dream, or it is something that was sold to you quite lamely by someone, and you thought, that sounds exciting, I
I'll do
think I
that.
want to go for it. No, unfortunately. So, but to answer that question, I wholeheartedly believe that we all have what it takes. We all have the potential, greatest of potentials, to achieve our dreams.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't think that would just happen.
No.
Dreams never just happen.
No.
Dreams are earned. You earn your dream. You work hard. You sweat. You
Yeah.
toil, and yeah. So that's what it is.
Oh, I think you're right. And I think as well in school, I was always champion of the underdog. So I was always the one who looked after the kids who were in care, or the kids who had a bit of a rough ride, or, because I just felt like, I think I've said this before. I did a river dipping exercise, and this young lad turned up, and the teachers, well, he can't do this and he can't do that. And he's been in inclusion, which basically means he's been in solitary confinement all week. And don't get me wrong, I've worked with some challenging kids, and they will push your buttons to the point at which you think, oh my goodness me, but he can't sit still, he can't focus, he can't engage, he can't get through a lesson without hitting someone, he can't do this, he
Mm,
can't do that. He came on the river dipping and he was the best one. So I
wow. Yeah.
sometimes think that we don't, it's our job to enable. And I think a lot of the time what we do with this endless blooming box ticking is that we don't focus on the inner child. And I think if
Mm,
we focus on the inner child, if we focus on their mental health and well-being, getting them to be well-rounded, satisfied, kind, caring,
mm,
considerate,
mm.
confident people, then everything else will follow. So,
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
don't think because we're not brave enough to say, oh gosh, I once worked with a girl. I have to say, I didn't much care for her. She wasn't a very nice person, which I think she was very ruthless, and she was very much about. She was a box ticker and very much about results, and I'm more about the child, because I think if you're about the child, the results will follow.
Mm,
And she came,
yeah.
she was quite high up. She was in management. She came on, she went, oh, I've taught 6 lessons of maths today, as if that was an achievement. And I thought, why have you done that? What is
Yeah.
that? All you've done is ticked off those 6 things on your
Yeah.
form that you haven't
Yes.
done quite yet. And oh yeah, we did this, we whizzed through that, and I thought
Yeah.
at that point I was quite new, and I just very soon realised it probably wasn't the place for me. But I thought, you've actually done those children a disservice. This isn't an
Yeah.
achievement that you've got them to do all of this stuff, because there'll be a few children in that class that hate maths. And I'm not saying
Of
they shouldn't
course.
do it, but you've made them do it all day long. So they're not going to love it anymore. They're going to hate it even
No.
more, aren't they?
No.
And
No.
what learning actually has taken place there? Because I bet if you go back to them tomorrow, they won't remember everything you've done. I don't know about you, but you get brain overload, don't you? You reach a point where you think, I physically can't take in anymore. So I
No.
don't, I just really, I think the inner, but then I think that's true in life. We don't spend enough time concentrating on our inner self. If we concentrated more on our inner self, then our outer self would be okay, because
Yeah.
we'd be in a
Yeah.
better place, wouldn't we?
It will be. It will be. That's why if you are looking at attitude, it is your inward view of the outside world, because when you thinking about your attitude, it is something that comes from inside. It's the impressions you hold within yourself. So that's what it is. But unfortunately, we don't spend much time to look within, and those that are helping us are out there. They are not trying to encourage us to look within, to say
No.
what is in your heart,
Mm-hmm.
what is this one thing that gets you energy, that gives you
Yeah.
that I just want to go and I want to go and do this. Because up until a person is identified with that, then they will live a frustrated life. And,
Yeah.
and education is also part to blame to that, because the educators, that's what they call them here now in Africa. Things have changed. It was funny because what I always laugh about it, I say during my schooling days, we had teachers and students, and we had teachers who taught, and we had students who learned. And nowadays they say they've got educators, they don't educate, and they've got learners who don't learn. So this whole thing has just completely gone wrong, in my opinion. I'm like, what is it? What's
Yeah.
all of this?
We've lost
So
our
that's
way.
what.
Yeah, we've
And
lost our way.
I'm
So,
like,
oh,
so we've come up with all these fancy names, but
oh,
when you look at them, it's like, no, it doesn't work like that.
no,
You
no,
educate and you learn. We're
yeah.
students, you learn. Now they are learners, and then they don't learn, and the educators don't educate. I'm like, okay, I rest
We're
my case.
polishing the outside, aren't we? We're polishing the outside
I
without
know,
worrying
yeah,
the box. Yeah.
but when things go horribly wrong, and we all point it to the young people, oh, it's the youth of today, they
Yeah,
don't have visions about the future, they don't have aims. What else, what can they aim for if
yeah.
if no one is exposing them to
No,
what is out there?
they
I
don't. Well, it
always
goes
hear,
back to our earlier point, doesn't it? They don't know
I
what
mean,
to aim for.
yeah, you hear this political talk. Every politician will tell you, oh, well, the future of our community or of our country is in the hands of the young people. And when I hear that statement, I ask myself, okay, I hear you 100%.
Mm,
But the question I have for you, what are you doing
yeah,
to give them the tools
yeah, yeah.
to prove that they've got what it
Absolutely,
takes to be future leaders? But
absolutely.
then, unfortunately, the education system which you have in place does not equip them with the right
No,
tools to be future
no.
leaders. So,
Yeah,
anyway,
I know. What are we
that's me.
going to do? So, a couple of questions then before we leave today. So, thinking about your journey and it could be just your journey up the mountain, or it could be your journey in general. 2 questions. What has been the highest point of your journey, and what has been the lowest point of your journey?
Thank you. In my journey of life today, what has been the highest point of my journey was coming from a no home individual to coming together with my lovely wife, or we've been together for more than, we're closing into 30 years now, which is an
Wow.
achievement. To build this family and from scratch to where it is today, bringing up 4 beautiful children, one of which is an admitted attorney, which happened. And through all my efforts, my children never got any scholarships or anything. But for me and my wife to have been able to achieve that has definitely been the highest in my journey of my life. And it had come through a lot of effort and support from other people,
Yeah.
and frustrations and what are these sacrifices in between, and but then here we are today, seeing that as the highest. But my lowest in my journey is this: the person that I would have wanted to see her fruits of her encouragement and of her empowering me with the self belief. But one day I would be a young man who would grow up and build a house for the family, left us before she witnessed pretty much what I've done and what I've achieved. That was my mother. So that tends to be the lowest in my
Yeah.
journey of life. But again, I'm a person that has grown so much. I understand that each and every one of us is given a certain number of years to live and impact and influence. And I think if I looked at it the way what she had done to get us to where we are, I would say she lived a challenging life, but she lived it to the fullest. So
Yeah.
I reconcile with that, and I'm happy with that she was able to do that.
She completed her mission, didn't she? Bless her.
Oh, she did. Oh, she did.
Yeah. That's
And I
lovely.
think even her passing was, I think it was just perfect, because it was perfect timing, because she passed on soon after I had brought her to the place where which I built as the house for her and my children.
Right.
But it was after I had climbed Everest the first time, which people always ask me, did she think about it? I say, I don't really know, because my mother never knew much about mountains, and she couldn't really understand why all of a sudden her son is all over the news and everything, in as much as she was so cheerful about it. But I don't think she understood it to the magnitude that
No.
other mothers would have understood. But
Yeah.
it was okay. It was okay. She witnessed that.
Yeah. Well, she sounds like she just wanted you to be happy and fulfilled, which is
Yes,
every parent's kind of dream. I've always said to my son, I don't really care what you do in life, just be a nice person and be happy. And beyond, I
absolutely.
actually don't mind if
Nothing else.
if you're a scuba diver or a dustman or do what you like, but just be good and be happy and do what
Yeah.
you love. So I think that's true. So so just before we go, you obviously have a very positive inner voice. You're very good at that. I think you're a very positive person in general. How can we encourage that in young people to have that positive inner voice? Because I've worked with lots of children who, through circumstance, and we've talked about how important it is to have support, and sometimes they don't have that, so their self-esteem is pretty low. They don't have that inner confidence, they don't have that inner positive voice. What would be your advice? How can we encourage that in young people?
Um, my advice and encouragement to young people who find it difficult to be positive about life, I would put it in this way. For me, I choose. It's a choice, because I just look at what will it serve me to be negative,
Yeah.
and I think it doesn't serve me much. It drains my energy, and it just makes me grumpy. It just makes me an unpleasant person. And it's a question of, do I want those qualities? And
Yeah.
the answer for me is no. So I choose. When I get up in the morning, I choose what I want my day to start like and end like. It's a choice. It's just being able to connect with yourself and know who you are, know what the things you want, and then it's your responsibility to attract positive energy,
Yeah.
as much as it is also your responsibility that you are attracting negative energy.
Yeah.
And that is why I say it is a choice. So you
Yeah.
choose. Once you know that, okay, I'm responsible for the energy I bring to myself,
Yeah.
which will probably be the energy that I also exude to others,
Yeah.
it is my duty and responsibility.
Yeah.
Once you're able to understand that, then it is easier for you to be able to block negative energy, and just because you know what energy, positive energy does for you. Positive energy serves me well, and it keeps me healthy, it keeps me happier, and
Yeah.
it just makes me excited about life.
Yeah.
And none of that can come from negative energy.
No.
It's
No.
because I've grown to know that. So if you're a young person who's feeling low self-esteem, negative energy, everything is just draining you, come to think about it, as it is you that are drawing that onto you.
Mm.
Therefore, it might be time to sit down and think and positively about who do you associate with. Do the people around you, does the environment around you allow you or give you positive energy? And it is your responsibility. You can't blame anyone. You can't blame your mother, your father, your cousins, your siblings. It's your duty. You
Yeah.
choose between positive and negative.
That's true. I do believe that. I very much believe that what you give out is what you get back.
Yes.
I think if you, they say if you had two tigers, which one would grow the biggest? Well, it's the one that you feed. So if you feed the negativity, and don't get me wrong, we all have days where we don't
Oh,
feel
yeah.
at our best, don't we? And that's okay. But the more energy you put into feeling miserable, the worse that will get. But the more energy you put into feeling positive, the better that will get. And
Of
people
course.
sometimes say to me, "Oh, you're really cheerful," and I say, "Yeah, because the alternative is pretty rubbish, isn't it? It's not very appealing."
That's exactly the attitude. That's
Yeah,
that's how that's how you can do it. You
yeah,
just decide, okay,
yeah,
is this serving me? And if it's not, you park it. And well, you said it well. I was talking to someone the other day. I said when we talk about positive thinking and positive self-talk, we are not saying that you will not think negatively,
no,
because those work together.
mm,
But you've got to get to a stage or to at a point where you are able to identify or recognize with either. Um, am I thinking negative? Is this a negative self-talk, or is it positive? And then you are able to change that.
yeah,
But if up until you recognize with that, then you tend to be just forging ahead and you're just draining your energy.
yeah,
No, and the good thing is, I believe it. You have control. That's the
yeah,
one thing you have control, because it is all about you controlling your mind, because that's what you have got control over, not outside influences and elements.
no.
It's all your mind.
We talk a
Yeah.
lot. I've talked a lot about radiators and drains. Like people you should surround yourself with. Some people are good for you, and they will, And I'm not suggesting
Yeah.
you will have a friend who might be down at times, but my other friend likened the drains. I don't know if you've ever seen Harry Potter, to the Dementors. They're like these
Yes.
creatures in the black cloaks that they get on the train
Yeah.
and they suck all of the goodness out. And she said, don't be around people like that, because we've all been around people like
No.
who are very
Yeah.
negative, who don't have anything nice to say. So
Mm.
it's about trying to put yourself in the right environment, and
Yeah.
believe that that's a better path. But it's been
It is.
so wonderful talking to you today, Sibu. So if people want to find you, you've obviously written this wonderful book, from To the Top from Nowhere, which I did check
Yes.
is available on Amazon. Because
All right. Oh, that's good to know.
I'm going to
Thank you.
purchase a copy of that. I can't wait to read that. So, and how can people find you?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much for asking that, and well, I really appreciate the opportunity as well. I'm on all the social media spaces. I'm on Facebook. I am on Twitter. I am on Instagram and LinkedIn as
Yeah.
well. But yes, I'm also on my website. I do have a website where there's a contact me if people wants to, and my website is www.sibusisovilane.co.za.
Okay, .co.za, and that is
Yes,
spelled Sibusiso, isn't it? And Vilane is
yes.
Vilane. So if you want to find Sibusiso, or Sibu for short, he's readily available on all the social media platforms, and he's wonderful guy to talk to, and he's got lots of knowledge to share. So we're going to be sharing more knowledge as the weeks go by, and more insight into how we can make creative learning the way forward. If you're interested in creative learning, you can also check out my website, which is www.writesmarteducation, that's right as in WRITE, writesmarteducation.co.uk. There's lots of creative learning resources on there for people who are interested and are looking for a way to enrich their sort of education and their learning, to inspire their pupils, but also to be inspired yourself, because I don't think you can be an inspirational teacher if you're not inspired yourself. It's pretty tricky. So
Oh yeah, absolutely.
you need to enjoy it,
I
don't
believe
you?
that.
Yeah, you need to
Absolutely.
enjoy it. You need to enjoy it. So I
Yeah.
had a little child say to me, when you're writing this, do you ever get bored? And I said, well, if I get bored, I know that what I'm writing isn't very good.
No, yeah, absolutely. That's the way to do it.
I need to
Yeah.
stop and take a
Then it's
break.
pointless.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
No.
thank you so
Wonderful.
much for listening to the podcast today. We'll be here again next week. And next week, we'll be talking about what is your passion. So how we help children and young people to discover their passions, and whether we all have them. So thanks again
Absolutely.
for joining us. And we'll see you all again next week. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Right, let's